In the fields of media studies, sociology, communication theory, and media psychology, the study of media influence and media effect highlights how mass media and media culture can impact individuals' or audiences' thoughts, attitudes, and behaviors. Given its vast reach, mass media, whether through written, televised, or spoken channels, plays a pivotal role in influencing modern culture, making it a significant subject within cultural studies. Media influence, which could result in a change or reinforcement of audiences' beliefs, is guided by numerous factors such as demographics and psychological characteristics. These influences can vary from positive to negative, sudden or gradual, short-term or long-term, and in some cases even reinforce existing beliefs. Researchers often scrutinize audiences' post-media exposure to identify changes in thinking, belief systems, attitudes, emotional, physiological, and behavioral effects. The impacts of mass media or immediate effects can be seen in numerous aspects of human life, from voting behaviors to views on violence, and from opinions of scientists to our understanding of others' opinions. In the evolving media environment, we function as both consumers and creators, obtaining and disseminating information via new media. Furthermore, the profound effect of media on the psychosocial development of children necessitates conversations between physicians and parents regarding their child's media exposure to provide guidance on appropriate usage. Numerous academic studies have delved into the realm of media and its effects. For instance, Bryant and Zillman defined media effects as the social, cultural, and psychological impact of communicating via the mass media, while Lang noted that media effects researchers study what types of content and what type of medium affect which people in what situation. Media effects studies, which often correspond to the emergence of mass media technologies, have undergone different stages, also referred to as media effects paradigms. Ultimately, as McLuhan articulated in his media ecology theory, the medium is the message. Initial research in media effects heavily centered on the strength of propaganda, such as Lasswell's study in 1927. These preliminary studies posited that the mass media wielded great power, with theories like the hypodermic needle model or magic bullet theory, suggesting that audiences were defenseless against the flood of information delivered by the mass media. This theory perceived audiences as helpless targets who could not avoid or resist the penetrating influence of mass media. The impact of this media, magic bullet, was direct, potent, and consistent. As the field progressed into the 1930s, the focus of research shifted to consider the empirical significance and intricate nature of media effects, considering the unique responses of individual audience members. During this time, with the Pain Fund studies as a notable example in the U.S., the impact of media on youth became a prominent research theme. Other independent studies focused on the potential and usage of persuasive strategies in media. In the 1940s, Hovland and colleagues examined the effect of using films to indoctrinate American military recruits. Simultaneously, Paul Lazarsfeld and his team initiated studies focusing on the influence of media on Democratic election campaigns, marking the inception of political campaign effect studies. Intensive research, including the work of Lazarsfeld, gradually unveiled an array of external variables which complicate the relationship between media and its audience, such as demographic traits, psychological factors, political interest, and varying media use habit. With the introduction of these variables, it became increasingly difficult for researchers to pinpoint a clear linear relationship between media exposure and effects on audience cognition, attitude, and behavior. While these findings led to a reevaluation of the omnipotent nature of mass media, they didn't dismiss the significant influence of media. Instead, they suggested that media impact works within the pre-existing social relationships and cultural contexts that primarily shape public opinions, attitudes, and behaviors. More nuanced theories were developed around these findings. The two-step flow of communication theory, for example, posited that media effect is indirect, working through the influence of opinion leaders. Meanwhile, Klopper's selective exposure theory argued that audiences are not simply passive recipients of media content, but tend to select the content which aligns with their prior beliefs. Understanding the current media landscape also requires an assessment of the institutional dynamics at play. Noam Chomsky's notation of 5 filters which mass media function through underscores this viewpoint. One of these filters is ownership, which reminds us that mass media institutions are profit-driven corporations, which may impact the type of content they produce overall. These studies, findings, and theories reveal the intricate, multifaceted nature of media effects analysis. Inherent flaws in media. Journalism, due to its nature, cannot be thoroughly controlled, leading to potential manipulation by powerful entities like governments, corporations, and large institutions who know how to exploit the system. Backlash. Journalists are often compelled to conform to the prevalent narrative as deviations attract criticism or flake. Those in power try to undermine unfavorable stories through discrediting sources, denigrating the narrative, and distracting the audience, unifying through a common foe. A shared enemy rallies and unites public sentiment. The limited media effect theory faced significant challenge upon new revelations that supported the view that media messages indeed could produce significant societal impact. Lang and Lang, 1981, suggested that the acceptance of the limited media effect theory was baseless, considering the evidence supported the significance of media. The mushrooming popularity of the television in the 1950s and 1960s pointed towards its tremendous societal influence. Researchers began recognizing the circumscribed focus of early explorations, which relied heavily on psychological models and concentrated on immediate, short-term effects. They began to explore the potential for long-term, deep-seated media influences. The early 70s saw new theories bolstering the paradigm of potent media effects, such as Elizabeth Noel, Newman's theory, the spiral of silence, and George Gerbner's cultivation theory, among others. These theories addressed various elements of media influence. Agenda, setting theory. The media, through its choice of topics and frequency of coverage, manipulates public perception of significant issues. In essence, it dictates what the public should ponder over. Framing. The angle, facts, coverage, and opinions presented by the media can influence how audiences perceive and interpret the content, essentially directing their thought process. Knowledge. Gap theory. This proposes that as mass media permeates social systems, those with higher socioeconomic status tend to assimilate this information quicker than their lower socioeconomic status counterparts, widening rather than minimizing the knowledge disparity. Cultivation theory suggests that consistent and pervasive media messages, especially on television, mold the audience's perception of reality. Spiral of silence. The fear of social isolation discourages individuals with minority viewpoints from voicing their opinions, subsequently inducing others with similar views to follow suit. The study shifted gears to incorporate qualitative and ethnographic methodologies into the formerly quantitative and behavior-centric research methods. Several investigations also concentrated on the impact of media coverage related to minority and peripheral social movements, for instance. Van Zoonen's 1992 research scrutinized how the mainstream media has affected the feminist movement in the Netherlands. From the 1970s onward, studies began to emerge about individual or group behavior in computer-mediated milieux, focusing particularly on the fallout of computer-mediated communication, chemistry, on interpersonal and group dynamics. This early research delved into how people interacting through chemic formed impressions about one another. Considering limitations like anonymity and absence of nonverbal signals, initial CMYC researchers primarily compared text-only internet content such as emails with traditional face-to-face interactions. Coleman and Smarksis, 1987. Daft and Lingles, 1986. Media richness theory offers an example, which evaluates the capability of media to replicate information. With widespread personal adoption of the internet in the 1990s, the domain of CMYC studies expanded further. This led to theories such as social information processing, Walther 1992, and the social identification individualization, side model Postmesserel 2000, which were developed to understand the effects of CMYC on users' behaviors, comparing them with the impact of face-to-face interactions as user content generation on social media platforms increased. These results became even more critical to CMYC studies. For instance, Valkenburg, Peter 2009, proposed the Internet Enhanced Self-Disclosure hypothesis among adolescents, suggesting that primarily social media platforms are used by youngsters to maintain real-life friendships, potentially enhancing these bonds. The rapid evolution of chemic technologies necessitates fresh media effects theories. The advent of web and new media technologies, inclusive of social media, compels communication scholars to reevaluate conventional effects models. Bennett and Iyengar, 2008. As the media landscape undergoes changes and audience behavior evolves, some theorists argue for a preference-based effects model for media impact research. Chaxiater, Schiffel-Iyengar, 2016. This model, dubbed preference-based reinforcement, suggests that the increasingly diverse online news environment aligns content with audiences based on their established beliefs and preferences. This phenomenon is driven primarily due to media outlets catering to ideologically specific audiences, resulting in more profitable advertising conditions. Additionally, a growing reliance of individuals on self-chosen information consistent with their pre-existing beliefs, gathered into personalized feeds, causing echo chambers or filter bubbles, and the use of new media interfaces such as personalized search engine results, leading to intentional and unintentional user-inputted information. Tailoring these factors prompt reconsideration of strong media effects in the contemporary media environment, including the tailored persuasion concept. Micro-level theories focus on the individual media user, examining how they interact with and are impacted by media. Examples of these theories include the priming theory, which outlines 6 different ways individuals can be affected by media. Cognitively, through acquiring new information, by forming beliefs based on media messages, by developing attitudes triggered by media topics, through emotional responses to media exposure, physically as media content triggers automatic reactions, and in behavioral changes or reinforcements. On the other hand, macro-level theories consider the influence of media on social groups, institutions, systems, or ideologies. A notable theorist in this area is Dennis McQuail, who devised a graph to organize the effects of media by intentionality and duration. One prominent study in the field of media effects is the third-person effect. This theory consists of 2 parts: a perceptual component describing how individuals frequently underestimate their own susceptibility to media influence, and a behavioral component, arguing that these perceptions lead people to act to safeguard those they perceive as more vulnerable. This effect was illustrated in a study investigating perceptions of violent and misogynistic rap lyrics. Participants believed they were less influenced by the lyrics than fellow students and significantly less than young people in New York or Los Angeles. This bias towards attributing one's own reactions to external factors, while attributing the reactions of others to personal characteristics, was further confirmed in a study by Stanley in 1994. He found that people generally provide situational explanations for television's effect on themselves and dispositional explanations for its effect on other audience members. The theory of social learning, originally proposed by Miller and Dollard in 1941, asserts that individuals can learn behaviors simply by observing them, even without personal enactment. This concept was further developed by Bandura in 1977, who suggested that even fictitious characters could serve as models for learning behavior. The notion that media violence could impact people's behavior has been studied for nearly a century, particularly examining its influence on children and adolescents, who are seen as more susceptible to media influence. Television and video games are frequently the focus of such studies. The emergence of motion pictures and the evolution of social sciences prompted extensive research in this field, such as the Pain Fund studies. While the credibility of such studies has been contested, they proposed a link between movies about rebellious teenagers and similar behavior in real-life adolescents. In his 1954 book Seduction of the Innocent, Wortham asserted that comic books played a role in encouraging deviant behavior, presenting a distorted worldview, and diminishing literacy among children. His research was not particularly rigorous, and recent studies hint at misrepresentation and fabrication in his conclusions. In his conclusions, however, it instigated public outrage and led to the discontinuation of many comic magazines. The ubiquity of television in the 1950s stimulated further concern, and subsequent research suggested possible effects like disinhibition and imitation, the former suggesting that violent media could normalize violence, while the latter stating that individuals could learn violent behavior from TV characters. Recent studies indicate a correlation supporting this theory, even when factoring in individual differences. Furthermore, repeated exposure to violent media may desensitize people to violence, which carries real-world implications. This desensitization is often seen as a problem in the film industry, with filmmakers prioritizing aesthetics at the cost of potentially glamorizing atrocities. Additionally, violent media might increase perception of violence in the real world, resulting in heightened anxiety about personal safety. These are some notable examples of how media can influence audiences on a mass scale. Gerbner's 1969 cultivation theory also emphasized the potential long-term effects of media, suggesting that continuous exposure to certain themes can influence individuals' perceptions of reality. News outlets can shape public sentiment by manipulating how news is presented. These gatekeepers of information strategically organize facts to emphasize certain perspectives. Their mode of delivery, such as broadcast time, extent of coverage, and choice of media, can also impact how messages are perceived, potentially creating, strengthening, or replacing viewers' points of view. Entman, 2007, coined the term framing as the process of finding interconnected elements in reality and constructing narratives that favor specific interpretations. The media, in this sense, can not only identify supposed problem sources, but can provoke moral judgments and champion preferred policies. In a long-term perspective, the consistent positioning of a story could have repercussions that enable specific ideologies and organizations related to those ideologies. Capitalism, patriarchy, heterosexism, individualism, consumerism, and white privilege are examples of ideologies that the media could enhance. Some argue that specific political parties are likely beneficiaries of such biases. However, robust empirical research is needed to support these assumptions. Many media outlets argue that gatekeeping or the filtering of news, which can result in setting a certain agenda or framing, is inevitable. The sheer volume of information ensures that filtering must take place. A media organization's internal subcultures determine the nature of the published content, while editors and other personnel filter messages to curate content for their specific audience. The rise of digital media, including blogs and social networks, has significantly changed the gatekeeping role of the media. Giants like Google and Facebook tailor content to their users, filtering thousands of search results and media postings to match users' preferences. In 2015, news discovery via Facebook and Twitter feeds jumped to 63% from 57% of users the previous year. These platforms act as additional gatekeepers, providing news and potentially acting as a check on media by raising awareness of biases or inaccuracies. Legacy media organizations, as well as newer online-only media, face significant challenges. The increasing number of outlets, coupled with downsizing following the 2008 recession, adds to the pressure of news reporting. The increasing role of public relations agencies in creating news has been noted, with 41% of press articles and 52% of broadcast news items containing peer material stories are usually rushed to press and edited post-publication. However, superb content is still highly sought after, and whichever outlet provides this may capture the fleeting attention of today's viewer. Lazarsfeld's research from the 1940s asserts that, contrary to popular opinion, mass media cannot easily alter ingrained attitudes of the majority because people selectively absorb media content that aligns with their pre-existing worldview. Rather, mass media tends to reinforce these views with marginal impact because well-informed individuals rely heavily on personal experience and pre-existing knowledge. The theory goes on to explain how mass media assert their dominance by mirroring the perspective of societal elites, owners, and sponsors of media outlets. Such power dynamics have been equated by sociologist Todd Gitlin to a distorted measure of importance akin to an incorrect understanding of power. With the advent of the 21st century, the explosion of the Internet and Web 2.0 technology have drastically transformed media usage patterns. Studies on media impact have consequently diversified and become more specific. In a micro-level media effects theory's meta-analysis, Valkenburg, Peter Walther, 2016, distinguished 5 central features. The selectivity paradigm proposes 2 arguments. 1. People focus on a limited part of the messages that potentially garner their attention. 2. Only selected messages influence people. Clapper, 1960, Rubin, 2009. Research acknowledged this media used selectivity many decades ago as a crucial limiting factor in media impact. Subsequently, 2 theoretical views uses and gratifications. Gatz et al., 1973, Rubin, 2009, and selective exposure theory. Knobloch, Westerwick, 2015, Zillman, Bryant, 1985, were created on this assumption, with the purpose of identifying the psychological and societal factors that guide and filter audience media selection. These theories position the media user at the core of the media impact process, conceptualizing media use as an intermediary between the antecedents and repercussions of media effects. In essence, users, knowingly or unknowingly, craft their own media use impact. Media's inherent characteristics are regarded as predictors in media impact. Modality, text, auditory, visual, or audiovisual forms, is believed to influence user selection and cognition during media use. Marshall McLuhan, 1964. The majority of media effects research continues to concentrate on content impact. Egg, violence, fear, character type, argument strength, on audiences. For instance, Bandura's 2009 social cognitive theory surmises that media portrayals of rewarded behavior and appealing characters increase the likelihood of media effects besides modality and content. Structural elements like special effects, pace, and visual surprise also play crucial role. Influencing audiences, these elements may instigate selective exposure by triggering the orienting reflex to media. Knobloch, Westerwick, 2015. This narrative underscores the intricate relationship between media and the variables it affects. These effects are not merely straightforward, but are subject to individual differences, socio-cultural contexts, and reciprocal interactions. Significant theories like the uses and gratifications theory and the conditional model of political communication effects propose conditional media effects. These theories suggest the mutual effect variables such as audience characteristics, environmental factors, and media outcomes have on one another. Transactional theories support the idea of selective engagement, where audiences shape their media experiences. This paradigm posits that interactions through forms like radio, television, and the internet create a mutual relationship between content producers and consumers, impacting each other differently. This impacts the type, depth, and reach of the produced content based on audience preferences. These theories, however, are most relevant in micro-level media effect studies, concentrating primarily on short-term individual impact. Politics and media enjoy an intricate relationship, with the latter potentially influencing public opinion on political matters. The media is seen as the fourth estate, acting as political watchdog. They are influential within powerful institutions, like the legislative bodies, wielding their ability to advocate for different socio-political causes. Evidence suggests that social media provides an avenue for politicians to connect with constituents, improving perceptions of authenticity. There is also an indication that voters perceive politicians to be more truthful on social media than in traditional interviews or TV appearances, however. The flip side to this is the potential for misinformation spread on social media platforms. With the prevalence of internet and social media as news sources, the danger of ideological echo chambers, where the same piece of news, real or fake, keeps circulating, presents a significant risk to the political landscape.